My attitude with respect to all young people, including athletes who may have a higher profile, is you get engaged, you get involved, you get educated about the issues that are affecting your lives, and then figure out what's the best way for you to make a difference. Some people may decide that's through protests. Others may decide, I want to mentor. So my advice is not that there's one way of bringing about change. I think there are multiple ways of bringing about change. If you are committed, engaged, and have studied the issues, then you'll have a positive impact and you'll find what feels right for you.
That was the president appearing last night on ESPN's town hall from the campus of North Carolina A&T, which is the nation's largest historically black university. Stephen A., what was your reaction to the town hall last night?
Well, I deeply appreciated our president saying what he said, highlighting how there are a multitude of ways to make a difference. You know, he's talking about it's not just about protesting. Sometimes it could be about mentoring. Sometimes it could be about putting your money where your mouth is behind certain causes. Sometimes it could be uplifting young brothers and sisters by playing the role of mentors, you know, taking them to games, meeting them for lunch, having conversations with them, advising them, counseling them, etc. It harkens me back to something, somebody I have great admiration for, my man Joe Madison, who hosts the Sirius XM radio show on the Urban View channel. He's always asking his callers, okay, I hear what you're saying. What are you going to do about it? There are a multitude of things that you can do. You can call your local councilman or woman. You can call your local congressman or woman. You can call your local senator, et cetera, et cetera. You can do things to make a difference. The reason why that resonates with me so profoundly, y'all, allow me to be incredibly open about myself and what a multitude of African Americans have to endure who are in the public eye, who are deemed to have a voice. On far too many occasions, one of the issues that exist within our community is that people want to define for you what you should be doing. And they want to highlight one specific way or one specific thing you should be doing in order for you to make a difference. And if you don't do it their way, they got a problem. Allow me to give you a perfect example, Max. So many times we talk about Michael Jordan and how Michael Jordan, we attach that infamous, you know, bad sort of negligent quote where he talked about how Republicans buy sneakers too, something he said in the 80s or 90s. And obviously you would have preferred at times that he was a Jim Brown, that he was a Kurt Flood, that he was a Muhammad Ali, okay? That he was even a LeBron James who's been willing to speak out on a bevy of issues in recent memory. But we ignore the fact that he's almost a billionaire, if not a billionaire already, that he employs black people, that he puts money in the pockets of African Americans who he employs, that he helps to educate folks. Same thing with a Kobe, same thing with a LeBron, etc. We ignore those kind of things because we want to define what somebody is supposed to be doing. So for the president to come out and to say, there's not one particular way to skin a cat, and there's not one particular way to be, you know, or to attribute or to give a contribution to our communities, I think that was incredibly important, particularly considering the locale, which was North Carolina A&T, which is right down the road from my alma mater, right up the road from my alma mater. Great university, by the way.
I want to piggyback off what you just said, Stephen A., because expressions of anger and protest frequently, for example, Kaepernick's and many athletes, that can be constructive, and the president wasn't saying it can't be constructive. He's saying in times that is good, if that's a platform you can use. But oftentimes expressions of anger feel good in the moment, but that moment is fleeting. You know, it almost acts as a safety valve. You don't like the way things are, the status quo isn't good, and so you're going to say something, and that you feel helpless about it, you express your anger, and you stick it to the man. And then that little safety valve releases that steam, and you just go back to life in the status quo as it was. And what the president was saying, I mean, a significant protest is, sure, it's good, but you can also, just by like mentoring a kid, you know, sticking it to the man feels good in the moment, but helping a kid actually has a lasting effect over the long run. And so there are various ways that you can make societal contributions and change the status quo that don't have to be just an outward expression of anger that feels good in the moment, a protest that if you have a platform to do it, there are all kinds of ways that people can chip in. I thought that was very good. I thought Stan Verrett, by the way, used that Sawatsky technique, that's the interview guru here at ESPN, and put the president right in describe, explain mode and did a fantastic job. The president had to carefully choose his words because Stan was doing such a good job with the interview.
Knowing our company, he probably met with Sawatsky for about 10 hours before the Obama interview. But let me also say this. Listen, what you're essentially saying is that you got to take into account the repercussions as well, because sometimes getting caught in the moment of emotions, it feels good to exhale at that particular moment in time. It doesn't take into account the collateral damage and the ultimate ramifications that could come to follow because of those few moments of emotions. These are the kind of things that we have to take into consideration. Just a few weeks ago, you had Isaiah Washington, the former actor from Grey's Anatomy, who's an outstanding actor, by the way, really wanting black folks not to spend their money on a particular day just to bring attention to the cause that the African-American community finds itself fighting against in this day and age. Whereas a justice columnist, Sean King, for the New York Daily News, appeared to be a bit more organized in what he wanted to do. But instead of joining in initially, what Isaiah Washington wanted folks to do was join him. And then when folks didn't do that, then ultimately he modified his position. But again, people sometimes are not on the same page, coming from two different places. Although the goals and the agendas may very well be the same, some things need to be thought out. Things don't need to be initially reacted upon, particularly based off of emotion. Because when you do that, you usually lose.
That's expedient and feels good, but the doing part is harder. And I thought the president focused on that very well.
And if you missed the town hall, you can check it out on the undefeated.com, their website. A ton of great content there. The Giants have lost 3 games in a row and are currently last in the NFC East. Maybe they need to watch some Kevin Hart workouts. In the last 3 games, Manning has 2 touchdowns, 4 turnovers, and 5 sacks, something Eli addressed on Tuesday, saying, "I didn't play as well as I needed to last week, missed some throws. I've got to play better, make some more throws, better decisions, can't turn the ball over." Max, you pay very close attention to this organization and team. Is Eli to blame at this point for the Giants' struggles?
He's one of the people to blame. Absolutely, yes. And a lot of years when Eli throws a lot of interceptions, he's actually not the guy to blame. When you go over the tape and everything and go, no, that's a blown route. That's Gilbride a couple years ago. That's a complex tree, route tree, and guy's not where he's supposed to be, and the offensive line didn't. But this year, in spite of the 64% completion percentage that he's putting up, I see an okay quarterback so far. I see a guy who's fine. He's a standard issue NFL quarterback, but that's not what he's paid to do. Eli is paid to be outstanding. And if we got outstanding quarterback play, I say I am a Giants fan. If the Giants got
a former Giant. Antonio, by the way, I didn't introduce you. I'm sorry.
The great Antonio Pierce. Yeah. Very indebted to him for play for my Giants. If the Giants had outstanding quarterback play, they win the Washington game, and they win the Packers game. Not even amazing quarterback, just better than your average quarterback. They're 4-1 right now. That's what Eli is there to do, especially with Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard, and Victor Cruz. I know they have issues in the running game, lots of injuries, and the O-line is porous. Here is my levels of blame. I blame number 1, Jerry Reese. They've struck out too often in the draft. The philosophy seems to be draft team captains. Don't worry if they're talented. And then when they take a risk with a guy like Eric Flowers, who's very young, there's plenty of time, but so far no good. Number 2, you got to say McAdoo. The team, when it was going well, they've shown discipline. All of a sudden, it starts to go bad, and 3 games now, no discipline. And number 3, Eli Manning. I put him right after the GM and the head coach in terms of the blame chart, but he's on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the picture, right, when Eli and the Giants are playing well, it's beautiful to watch. But when he's playing bad, it's some ugly football now. It's ugly football to watch. And Eli, for the most part, has always had an outstanding supporting cast, right? You go back to when I was there, the Plaxico, the Monty Toomers, Tiki Barbers, Brandon Jacobs, a running game like that. Great offensive line at that time. Well, now he's not. He has a young offensive line, right? They're trying to mix and match different guys and put them in a position. And then each and every week now for the last month or so, it seems like, they've had to deal with questions in the locker room about a teammate. We've addressed that enough. It seems like to me that Eli is pressing a little bit too much. You know, there's opportunities down the field. And, you know, again, you talked about the completion. The reason that's happening is because he's not throwing the ball down the field. You're talking about short and intermediate routes. When the ball's going down the field, they're not connecting. And for some odd reason, strangely enough, him and Odell Beckham don't seem like they're on the same page this year. There's a lot of times in the game, either Odell's open, he's overthrown, or not looked to. So there's a lot of frustration, I think, within the offense. But when you say put all the blame on Eli, you have to. You have to do that with any quarterback, especially a franchise quarterback who's a two-time MVP.
Stephen A.
I completely agree with Antonio. It's on Eli as far as I'm concerned. As a matter of fact, I put the Odell Beckham immaturity situation on Eli as well. Because Odell Beckham Jr. is 23 years of age. He is a stud. He is a miniature in size. And as a result, he's a target for bigger yet athletically inferior football players that go up against him. So he's going out on that field. He's getting open. He's doing what he's got to do. And he's playing for a quarterback that's not getting him the ball. That in no way absolves him from how he's conducting himself. It's no way to be apologetic about it. He cannot do that. I understand it. But understand where the responsibility lies as it speaks to his frustration and that of this team. Let's also take into account the fact that the offensive line, as shabby as it may be, that's been the case for years. We've seen Eli play better. By the way, he's played better with fewer weapons. He only had Odell Beckham Jr. last year. He's got Sterling Shepard this year with Victor Cruz back and Odell Beckham Jr. still there. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you have more weapons now than you ever did before. You just ain't playing up to snuff, which brings me to Ben McAdoo, the head coach. Well, you were the offensive coordinator, somebody that Eli had developed a rapport with. The responsibilities that you have as a head coach are far more extensive than what you had as an offensive coordinator. And as a result, you didn't get to focus primarily on Eli Manning the way you were able to do so in the past. Now you've got other responsibilities, which is why the Giants should have been careful about what they decided to do. If you're going to let Tom Coughlin go, let everybody go. And if you're going to keep everybody else, why not just keep Tom Coughlin as opposed to making him the scapegoat? These are the kind of things that have happened to the New York Giants. Because say what you want about Tom Coughlin, and I was one that believes your time comes. It ain't that you're a bad coach, that you can't coach. You do get to a point where it is time for a new voice. The flip side is, think about how structured and disciplined Tom Coughlin is and was. Think about who he is and think about what he mandated from the rest of the team. Ben McAdoo doesn't seem to be that fixated on things the way Tom Coughlin was. And that seems to me to have made the environment a touch more chaotic, which could be more impactful in terms of from a distraction standpoint for Eli Manning. I think all of those things in some way have contributed to Eli's struggles thus far.
I want to talk about McAdoo for a second and the lack of discipline, Antonio, because on the one hand, you have the Eric Flowers incident, who's been playing poorly since he's been a Giant, but you look at the raw talent, and he's only 22 years old, and left tackle's a skills position. Some guys it takes some time. Right, okay. He seems to have a rough attitude and everything. Some of the stuff you like to see at that position, but he shoves an ESPN reporter, and now the league's looking into it. McAdoo,
he should be suspended,
right,
Max.
McAdoo didn't suspend him right away, which leads me to believe, as poorly as Flowers has played at left tackle, what's the alternative? And because McAdoo feels like we got to win our next game, Ravens at home, that's a real thing, that kind of discipline, because McAdoo, and then when you look at this, the struggle of the offense, McAdoo's only there because of the offense, because Eli seemed to like the offense at a certain point better than Gilbride's offense, so now he's there. The offense is struggling, and they're undisciplined.
I've only been in this situation one time in my career, and I had 4 head coaches throughout my career. It was Steve Spurrier, where he was a head coach and offensive coordinator, and he couldn't mandate, he couldn't control the roster. There's a lot of things that happened that he really probably had no idea about or did not know how to handle, because he was focusing on his offense. And sometimes as a head coach, when you have the duty of either calling the offense or defense, things slip through. Now, that's where Steve Spagnuolo needs to step in now, right? He's been a head coach. He was kept on that coaching staff there to be kind of like plan A or B with that coaching staff. And I think with McAdoo, not just the Eric Flowers incident, it goes back to Odell Beckham, right? It goes back to, like, every locker room changes with head coaches, but there's a lot of things that's changed in that Giants locker room. Now when you start to watch the team play, you said, well, maybe that's the reason what's going on. Maybe it's a little too loose over there. And again, you need to change it up a little bit from Coach Coughlin. But in the market they're in, being in New York, man, if you don't have structure and you're letting the guys just run wild and not really have accountability for their actions, this is the result you get. You get a losing record.
Is Odell justified? I agree with Steven. We've talked about this in the last couple of weeks. Odell, when he was going crazy, it's because, look, I'm open and you're not seeing me. Right. And then when you are seeing me, you're throwing behind me. You're not hitting me on my steps.
No, he had a
valid
valid point about that. I mean, I was at the game against Redskins, and it was blindly how open he was. Just didn't happen. But again, this all goes back to, at the end of the day, Eli, win or lose as a Giant, you win with Eli or lose with Eli, and he has to step his game up.
No question. Antonio, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks, bro.
Coming up next.